Best way to stay healthy is by making sure you're putting the right things in your body, which is easier said than done when you're trying to figure out the right diet and supplements to take. Good news. Cardimax Immune Booster has you covered. Right now, American Party Podcast listeners get 30% off your next 4 orders. Use the promo code American at cardimax.com. That's CARDOMAX.com, helping you achieve your max. Here we go, boys and girls.
Here we go. I'm excited.
Anybody in between?
You know, Dan, usually you don't let me come and interview people.
Yeah, because you embarrass me in public all the time.
Yeah, well, you know, it is what it is.
Just like constantly, it's just not straight nonsense with you all the time. Ever since you got awarded the Medal of Honor, you're just like, oh, I'm Dakota Meyer.
You know, hey,
like no one cares.
It happens. Yeah, it happens.
Today we have a very special guest, General Don Bolduc. He is not a general anymore, I suppose. Right? Retired.
I'm retired.
And how long has that been the case? When did you retire?
Almost 4 years now. October 2nd will be 4 years.
And you've held some pretty prestigious positions. You were commander of 1st Bat over 3rd Special Forces Group for a while. You were in SOCOM in Africa as a deputy director for a while. Tell us about some of your experience, how you got involved in the military in the first place, and then how you graduated through the ranks, for lack of a better phrase, to give people some context.
Sure. So real quick, born and raised Laconia, New Hampshire. Learned my work ethic on our family farm. My grandfather had a requirement for all Bolduc males to join the military, so it was kind of a foregone conclusion that I would join the military. I decided to do it right after high school. So 11 days after high school, off I went, basic training, and 4th ID, then the 82nd, went from private to sergeant, which I consider to be my really formative years and shaped me, to be the type of officer that focused on the organization and the people in it and not the people above them. So I think that is the most significant part of my career, because I look back and it really shaped me very, very well. And I was told by my company commander when I was deciding to go to college and then on to ROTC that I would make a better sergeant major than I would an officer. He basically told me I couldn't do something, so I went out and tried, prove to him that I could do it. And that's how I ended up in the officer corps. Got commissioned in 1988, and then had the honor of serving and commanding at all levels, all the way up to division level command, Special Operations Command Africa. And I retired in October of 2017, married for over 32 years, and she's a veteran as well. 3 boys and 3 grandchildren, grandson at 8 and 2 granddaughters, 6 and 3. So I've had a very blessed life.
That's awesome.
It sounds like it. That's a lot going on there. So let's jump right into it. You have been. We actually did a show on an episode on this show not too long ago called "Where Are the Generals?" And the premise of the show was, over the last couple of years, maybe this very particular 4-year period that some people might remember, a lot of general officers were very vocal about their displeasure in a certain president's attitude, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, because it wasn't really his strategy that they were talking about. It was just his attitude, right? So a lot of people had a lot to say. There was the open letter to America where 700 military officers and former national security leaders denounced President Trump and blah, 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 so on and so forth, including his former Secretary of Defense, James Mattis. Now, we've just experienced, within the last month or two, one of the worst military operations I've ever seen in my life. Now, I was in the 82nd as well. I was in 2325. A private in the 82nd Airborne could have written a plan. Anybody that's ever studied for the E5 board inside the 82nd Airborne could have written the plan to deal. Let's say everything had gone tits up already. We already pulled out of Bagram, and now we had to deploy the DRF-1 there. Anybody that studied for the E5 board in the 82nd could have written this whole plan themselves. Milley actually did this in Panama in 89, right? So what the fuck happened here, and why has there been nothing from any of these generals?
Well, I tell you, it was a complete debacle, and these generals have grown accustomed to become political generals. I call them chameleons. I've watched them from the time that I was a young officer all the way up through, the same guys. Remember, Mattis was a 1-star when this war kicked off, a 4-star, CENTCOM commander when he retired. I knew it was a mistake to hire Mattis as the Secretary of Defense. I knew it was a mistake to hire Kelly as a Chief of Staff and originally the Homeland Security Secretary. And so, and I said it in an article, and then people kind of, up here in New Hampshire turned it, kind of against me and saying that I wasn't supporting Trump. But I was supporting Trump because I was, speaking out on these guys are just not the right generals for the job. And consistently through the years, they have made bad decisions about policy and strategy. Milley has done it since he was a 1-star. Austin has done it since he was a 1-star. The Secretary of State, I watched for 8 years as the Deputy Secretary of State, completely missed the mark. We watched Biden completely miss the mark as Vice President. And then if you research his Senate time, you realize that guy can't, really do a good job out there when it comes to making decisions about national security. He's failed in every single way. But the generals, since after the Korean War through the Vietnam War, have, it was really with Westmoreland, started to become career generals, started to become political generals, started to become these generals that were more concerned about themselves and protecting themselves. And they have developed a very strong club. They call it a club. When I was promoted to general, first person shook my hand, said, "Welcome to the club." They did it. I got promoted in Afghanistan. They did it to my wife, who was VTCing in, and the general sitting next to her shook her hand and said, "Welcome to the club." And I didn't really know what that meant until it was explained to me, right? Yeah, no general says no to another general. You never call another general out in public. You follow the rules. It's move along, go along to move along. It's organizational nepotism. I was told I had to go out and find a 3 or 4-star general who I could, ride their coattails in to advocate for, promotion to 2-star and above, right? And so performance no longer became good enough. Dedication to your unit no longer became good enough. Taking care of the men and women in your command was secondary to moving up the ladder. And I saw it consistently. And I watched many general officers do this. And so it creates these, general officers that want to make, multiple stars. It creates this environment where they don't challenge them. And I've been in many meetings where things were to be challenged. I knew the opinions of my peers. I raised my hand to tell my commanding general, my 4-star, my 3-star, respectfully and with facts that this isn't a good idea, only to be left standing there by myself, right? I did it for the change in the Afghan strategy back in 13 and 14. I did it with the Africa strategy and policy, which was broke. And I did it to take care of men and women in my command that were suffering from post-traumatic stress, TBI, pain management issues, and all these things that were negatively affecting morale, and discipline in our units, and not punishing them and creating an environment where they would come for help and they'd get the help. And I did it by proclaiming, I got post-traumatic stress, I got TBI, I got pain management issues. I have not been productive in my professional and personal life. And so I went for therapy, and I figured out how to get you through therapy, how to get you to become a better version of yourself without taking you out of your job, without punishing you, without ostracizing you, without putting you on a non-deployment list, right, taking you off your team, which is most valuable to you, removing your identity. The whole approach by the military is punishment, right? Mm-hmm. And then these bullshit investigations that they do, trying to blame our subordinates for everything and protect themselves. And we mentioned earlier a book called Sacrifice by Michelle Black, who I recommend to everybody to read about the Niger ambush. I fought hard behind the scenes as a retired officer, trying to get SOCOM to do the right thing. And I reached out to the SOCOM commander, Tony Thomas, at the time. And, you know, I was insulted by him numerous times in emails and, you know, told to mind my own business. But other retired generals, you know, they get involved, but as long as they do it on the side of the general, then, you know, there's no repercussions there.
Right.
But
That's actually a good point. So there's been, in our lifetime, there have been 2 instances where general officers, either current or former, have come out in support of a presidential candidate. The first one that I remember was Admiral Crowe, who was the secretary, or he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs under Reagan. And he endorsed Clinton in '92, which is laughable, to be honest, because what foreign policy chops did he have? Right? Or Al Gore, for that matter, or anybody that he had planned on assigning his anyways, beyond all that. That was it was an eyebrow raiser, but nothing like 700 people penning an open letter saying that Trump has to go.
And how is that, you know, just that little piece of it, how is that even legal, right? Like how can any active duty service member at any point go and endorse the president or denounce a president, right? Either way, how?
Well, an enlisted person can do that, right? An enlisted person, not in uniform, not as a representative of the military, but an enlisted person could do it. An officer cannot challenge.
I definitely don't think you could do it and put your military title there.
No,
right?
certainly not.
So I mean, you might be able to do it as a free citizen. Obviously, you can go out. My name's Dakota Meyer, but if I put Sergeant Dakota Meyer and I get on a list that's specific with military, how is that even legal?
Well, it's not if you use your official name and capacity to do it, and you're on active duty. When you retire, you're authorized to use it. But I endorsed a letter for President Trump with 3 other general officers and admirals.
But you're off active duty.
I was off active duty, right? We wanted to counter that letter,
of course,
that was done by the 700 and say, hey, wait a minute, not all of us are on that, are on that bandwagon, and they don't represent all the generals and all the admirals. And when you look at the letter that we signed, most of the signatories are 1- and 2-star generals. Most of the ones on the 700 are 3- and 4-star political generals. And
well, that's what let's explain.
There's a big difference there.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Let's explain that, because a 1- and 2-star general, that is a rank of merit, but 3- and 4-star generals are that's a billet, right? So you're
right. It's a political rank.
Yeah, you've been appointed. So you're a 1- or 2-star general, and you've now been appointed to a specific position that carries 3- or 4-star rank. And you've been appointed there by a politician. So the only way to get to a 3- or 4-star general rank is if a politician or group of them says, "Here's your new job," and it carries with it that rank. Just so I'm not sure if the audience is aware of that, because they think they see linear promotions in the enlisted ranks, but it doesn't work that way.
And how many 3 or 4 stars do you have in the military at any time?
Ooh.
Oh, geez. I don't know. I think there's in the Army there's well over 300 generals.
Yeah.
Marine Corps has obviously a much smaller number. The Air Force and the Navy, generals in the Air Force and admirals in the Navy, somewhere between the Marine Corps and the Army. I think the Army has the largest number. But in my opinion, there's way too many.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And here's especially if they have to be appointed, because that's where you start losing. You said something that was really really interesting to me when you talked about policy versus strategy. Look, our military should, the only policies that the military should be focused on is our interest as far as tactically and strategically. Like outside of that, like the United States military should not be involved in anything on how it's going to look on us politically.
No, of course not. The founders of this country very specifically set it up so there would be civilian control of the military, not military influence over the civilian government.
So why is there not this block off of these politicians being able, like some wall to where these politicians aren't influencing all these generals? That's what I'm seeing a lot of, is all these generals are getting up, they all go to the Pentagon. then they're all over there. I mean, it's just this flow, right? And the further they get over there, the more political that they get. You talk about a man who's as political and as it gets is, look, Joe Dunford. You didn't mention him, but Joe Dunford is up there with them, right?
He's right up there with them, yes.
Right up there with them. And you talk about these people, and it's like, how do we fix this? How has the military gotten so political? And how do we fix that?
Well, I believe we have to go back to the George Catlett Marshall model of selecting senior leaders. And we're going to even have to go back to how he fixed the senior leader problem going into World War II. And what he did was he took a trusted guy. They went out on a freaking boat ride and they sat down and they reviewed all their general officers, right? And they said, these guys got to go political, incompetent, couldn't lead a horse to water, blah, blah, blah. All these things that they used for criteria to get rid of them. And they cut it down to the bone. And then they brought in lieutenant colonels and colonels. Now, this was at the height in the beginning, of World War II. So people that say to me, oh, you can't do that, you're going to ruin the military. Listen, we did it before and it worked. Yeah. We took guys that know how to lead, that know how to get stuff done. And then he held them to a standard. He said, hey, we're at war. There's three things that are going to mark your success as a senior leader. Either you're going to be successful, you're going to fail, or you're going to die. And if you die, well, that takes care of itself. If you fail, we're going to reassign you. And we're going to reassign you to another post, and you're going to have a chance to work your way up. There were a lot of instances in World War II where 1-star generals were fired, 2-star generals were fired, 3-star generals were fired, busted down in rank, some to colonel, and they made it back up because it was inside a system based on merit, and you could make a mistake and work your way up. Well, now you can't make a mistake. So if you make a mistake, you certainly can't have it pinned to you, so you blame your subordinate, right? You're so political, and organizational nepotism in these cliques, in this club, is the way to go, that you have to obey the guy above you instead of doing what Marshall wanted you to do, and that is always honor your oath, always stay loyal to your country, always stay loyal to your organization, always stay loyal to your people. And you better be in the position where you put yourself last. And if you don't do that, you're freaking out of here. If you're not successful in combat, you're out of here. And oh, by the way, he believed that he had some generals that were really good trainers and could train, but they couldn't do shit in combat.
Right.
So we're not going to send them to combat. But we, in our military, we promote these guys and we give them every job under the sun, even ones that they're not qualified.
The first like almost decade of MARSOC officers were just random Marine Corps officers.
That's right.
They wanted to cycle through MARSOC. No, motherfucker, send me special operators.
Well, so still, like in the Marine Corps, like
there wasn't even an MOS for that alpha.
Well, their first sergeants come from non-combatant groups, right? Like their first sergeants that are in there come from like non-combat MOSs. And I'll tell you, I seen this firsthand. This is why I've always had a problem with generals, and not just generals, but officers and as it is.
Say in general. Just say it. You wanted to say it, it's fine. Go ahead.
I did. But look, I got the Medal of Honor because of shitty leadership. They did 2 investigations on where I lost my guys in Ganjigal in 2009. They did 2 investigations.
Trying to pin it on you.
Both investigations.
Because you disobeyed orders?
Well, there was that piece of it that was still argued about.
Yeah.
But the other piece of it was there was 2 investigations that said a direct loss of leadership, or direct loss of life due to leadership in both investigations, right?
Right.
So what they did is they reprimanded this major named Major Granger, which is is complete garbage. And another guy. And what happened was, he got promoted. So he got promoted, and then he got to keep his benefits and everything. And then a few years later, after everybody let this die down, a general on his way out last day took away those letters of reprimand. And so basically it's all off their record and everything, right? The only people who can still hold them accountable is me reminding people of who they are. Mm-hmm. But this is it, right? I mean, after getting the medal, I've got to be previewed and just talking about the Marine Corps side of it, in 2013, the Commandant of the Marine Corps put out this statement, and it's called it the reawakening. Do you remember that? Do you remember the reawakening in the Marine Corps, where it talked about how basically the lower enlisted needed to reawake themselves and find their morals?
That's usually never the case, right?
And it's really how messed up these generals are. You know, the leadership, I call it the Star Club.
One Star Club is what we used to call it, yeah. And that stemmed from a bunch of colonels doing reckless shit to try to make a name for themselves, typically. Or like he's talking about is deflecting any kind of responsibility from themselves.
And that's what you see. And I think you're going to see in this drone strike, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. You start seeing them doing an investigation in this drone strike. I think these generals are literally going to pin it on some lieutenant, some guy sitting in the room.
Are they going to make up a fake intelligence asset like Fastball again or the Steele dossier? What's it going to be? It's going to be something like that, right?
What do you think's coming out? Because somebody's got to answer for this, right? Somebody has to, at this point.
Maybe.
What do you think's going to happen?
Oh, I think they're absolutely circling the wagons right now and trying to figure out what the lowest level they can go inside the organization to figure out who to blame for this without dinging anybody that's on their little list to become a general and without dinging any of the generals, right? And that's exactly what they're doing. I've seen it. I saw it in the Niger ambush where originally they came out and they didn't have any accountability for any of the general officers, and I publicly came out and said that was wrong. And so then they blamed it on the SOC Africa commander because he was retiring. So he could take one for the general officer team, and then they could say, oh, yeah, we held the general officer accountable. I protested what they were doing so hard that the SOCOM commander, Tony Thomas, actually wrote a memorandum blaming me for it because I didn't have good relationships with the AFRICOM general officer and admirals on the staff. Well, that's not true, but the reason why I would get in conflicts with the generals either on the SOCOM staff or the AFRICOM staff is because they weren't taking care of my guys. And I wouldn't let them get away with it.
Which is what a good leader should do.
Yeah, that's right. They get pissed at you, right? So, I wouldn't let them. I just wouldn't let them get away with that bullshit, and they know it. So he writes a letter to Mattis blaming me for the Niger ambush. It was unbelievable. Now Mattis crumbled the letter up and said it's a bunch of bullshit, which I was surprised by, and called Tony Thomas on the carpet and chewed his ass. Right? So, I mean. But nothing happens. You know, these guys go back and it's the big club and it's like, yeah, I got to call you in. I got to chew your ass. But it's, don't worry about it. And you remember the bombing of the hospital in Kunduz.
Yep.
None of the generals got punished for that. As a matter of fact, the general in charge of it got a letter of reprimand, similar to what you're talking about here, put in his field file.
Yeah.
While they hammered the major and the captains and everybody else on the ground. So I'm expecting them to punish the wrong people for this because, Biden, he's incompetent, right? And the whole system there is run by ineptocracy, right? I mean, they've created a whole new business to be just absolutely incompetent at doing their jobs. At the state side, the Department of Defense side, and, the National Security Council staff. They're incompetent. They're dangerous.
Yeah, I haven't seen it this bad. I don't think I've seen it this bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah, it's you're talking about a meritocracy. I mean, we're not even operating in reality anymore. The letter we mentioned earlier, we talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago, signed by these 700 general officers and intelligence community people, was provoked by the quote-unquote photo op that Trump did, where he was blocking off protesters. That turned out to be completely fabricated. None of it was true. Like, not one word of that was true. And nobody ever took responsibility for that either. So these former officers who were sworn to protect not one political party or the other, but the goddamn Constitution,
right,
believed a lie, took a stand on that lie, and when it came time to be responsible for the fact that they were duped, They all disappeared into the ether. And now, when actual service members' lives have been taken by the enemy, they have nothing to fucking say about this
nothing
stuff.
to say. Like, nothing to say.
Very bizarre to me.
Nothing to say.
And you got General McKenzie coming out,
Oh.
who, I mean, he's the only one who's even tried to say, we take responsibility for this bombing, which after you know damn well that we knew within an hour that we hit the wrong place. Of
course we did.
You know we did. And for him to take 20 some days or 15 days or whatever to come out and finally so I think that's a chicken shit way to do it. And how do you feel about this? So you're seeing, because look, we have hammered General McKenzie, we've hammered General Milley, fucking Austin, all of them, right? We've hammered them. But now you're getting some source that, they briefed the Biden administration on warning them about pulling out too early. What do you think at that position that they're in? Just because, so do you give them grace for warning him, but now standing by him through this shit show?
Absolutely not.
What's your opinion on that?
So I've sat in principal committee meetings when the president and his primary cabinet members make these decisions. I've sat in deputy committee meetings. I've sat in coordinating subgroups that make the decisions that go up to the DC and up to the PC and ultimately. I've sat in all of those, right? I've been a member a supporting member inside all of those, right? And I know how it goes. And yes, you're expected to give your best military advice. But if it's a matter of, tactics, right? Or, something that isn't going to create failure or unnecessary risk or negligence, or somehow you have some sort of moral responsibility to do more than just give your dissent in a meeting. Yeah. They tripped that criteria. They tripped it hard. And they should have come out and they should have said, hey, listen, this is not good. We're not going to execute this military operation until we get the following. Because if we don't, then it's going to be a complete disaster. Now, you can replace me if you want and get some other lemming to do it for you, because there's plenty behind Milley because they set it up that way. So they'll just get somebody up there, some bobblehead that'll do exactly what he says. They didn't want to do that because they didn't want to lose their jobs, right? Yeah. And they didn't want to put it on the line. And they didn't get their jobs by making those tough calls to begin with. They got their jobs by going along and moving along. Yeah. And so you're not going to, so I don't give them any quarter. They had a responsibility. And after day 3 of that withdrawal, they should have stood up and said, stop all, to include the general on the ground, General Donahue, who I know, and he's a good friend. I know him. I like him. He's a good guy. But I would never have put my people in that mess. I would have pulled them back. I would have said, screw this. This is bullshit. And we're not going to do it until you give me the following things and we start, doing this correctly. Otherwise, go ahead and fire me. I don't care. Yeah. I didn't make general officer to play patty cake with the senior people. I made it to take care of my organization and the people in it.
Well, and that's the thing for me, right? Is you hear these guys coming out and saying, and what they're doing. They leaked that to a source to try to save their name.
Of course they did.
It came from those two assholes. And,
you are on it.
So what they're trying to do is literally they're trying to say, well, I told him that that my job is to advise him, and I advised him. He didn't listen, so it's not on me.
Yeah, say what you want about Mattis. Say what you want about Mattis, and I've got plenty of negative shit to say to him, especially about the Cohen group led by William Cohen that does primarily they bring American and Chinese businesses together, and they have 2 offices in China, and all of a sudden this huge blunder by the guy they wanted to get in office has resulted in China doing really well. I don't know if there's anything in there, but
you linked it.
We're all adults here, but. Say what you want about Mattis. When he disagreed with the serious shit that Trump was doing, he left and he said why, right? Yeah. Which I think is an appropriate and responsible thing to do if you're a general officer.
Whether I agree with why he did it or not, But these guys, I think that I mean you're watching. Look, you know the SOCOM side of it. I mean, you've been in a lot of shitty places where bad guys with guns are there. So, I mean, I was watching this where they were standing these people outside the Kabul airport, these Marines or these service members, thinking to myself, well, I know where this goes.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time, right? So I truly believe that everyone from the point of who went ahead and went along with the decision to put those Marines out there, every one of them from that point all the way to the fucking top should be fired. That includes General Berger. That includes 100%. General Berger. That includes all of them that said, we're okay with this. They should all be fired. Their military benefits should be fucking gone.
Yeah.
And they should just be happy they're not on trial for murder.
You don't get to fuck up that bad where it costs 13 service members' lives and just get away scot-free.
And when you start holding our leaders accountable at that level, they get paid a lot of fucking money. They get a lot of fucking power. And with that comes the responsibility of accountability and the responsibility of what happens below you because we're paying you for that job.
Well, you're right.
Let's take it back. Right. Let's take it back through this timeline. Right. So one of the first things that happened was they decided to do this truncated pullout for some fucking reason because they felt pressure from Trump's plan that wasn't. He's been gone for 6 months at this point. I don't know what the fuck is anybody. I don't know why anybody's still saying his name at this point. Frankly, if you're still talking about your predecessor 6 months into your new job, then you're kind of a piece of shit, right? Am I right about that?
Absolutely.
So Biden gets a call from the Afghan president and says, no, we didn't pull out of Bagram. It's fine. This call, you can go listen to it on the internet right now if you want to. We didn't do that. We'll be fine. You guys are all good. Don't worry about it. Blah, blah, blah. Lied to that guy. Straight up lied to him. Then we started pulling out of Kabul airport, and we had to redeploy the DRF-1 from the 82nd Airborne. That is not a game plan. That's a fucking breaking case of emergency situation, right? That's not a plan. So this whole thing went from the White House think tank or whatever the fuck you want to call that circus all the way down through the military, and at least General Milley was in the room because he's on the National Security Council. He has no out in this at all.
None.
Even Lloyd Austin could possibly say something about it, although the Armed Services Committee has now requested his plan of action to be delivered to them. So who knows where that's going to go. We had to send.
Well, they're doing the slides right now for it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're making it right now.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why it's taking so long. That's why they didn't deliver it the same day.
Because because if it was already made, they could just forward it, right?
Boom. That was it.
Just walk over with a fucking thumb drive. So
they're making the slides right now. I know they are.
Hold on. This is a big plan. We need to come up with it.
So if no one else, at least Milley, who by the way was in the 82nd. When we went to Panama, he was there. Like he deployed to Panama. He knows what this is all supposed to look like. Forget about everything that led up to that point. You deploy the DRF-1. You get the 82nd Airborne comes in and secures the airfield, starts airfield operations. And if you have Marines or Rangers there, they push out and create standoff, and then you use targeted JSOC and fucking drone strikes to create more standoff, right? That's how this all works. A specialist in the 82nd Airborne could have drawn this plan on the back of a fucking napkin. So there's no way. There's only two options here. Either Milley is a complete coward and will not speak up and say what he knows to be true, or they did this shit on purpose. And I don't want to believe the latter. So I have to believe that he is just an abject coward and doesn't belong in that position. Now, we don't have any authority to do anything about that. These people serve at the pleasure of the president. There's no recourse.
I have seen and witnessed them not push back on strategies or on policies that they should absolutely push back on at subordinate ranks than they are right now. I know how they think and act. This is all about making sure that they stay in power, that the people that they line up to take their place will cover for them and never speak out against them. Have you ever heard anybody take that, do a stack and swivel check when they got in charge and said, this is as messed up as it's ever been. We're going to do A, B, and C and get this squared away? No, none of them. They just slide right in, and it's business as usual, and we're going to cover the next guy. Listen, this is all Dunford, right?
Yes.
Milley replaced Dunford.
This is Dunford.
Right? So guess what? it's, I mean, it's just all linked. And you guys made, you made a superb point earlier, just a few minutes ago, on exactly, how this all transpired. And it is complete and utter political, go along to move along. We have been co-opted by the politicians and the elected officials, and we're not going to say anything, regardless of the detriment that it has on our service members, the mission, our reputation in the world. Everything has been completely, subverted, right? We have, I'm being contacted by guys in Africa that work for me and in other places, and they're saying it's more dangerous here than it's ever been. Why? Because they don't trust us anymore. It's not that they don't trust us. They don't trust our government and our leaders to make the right decisions. And that's very dangerous for our guys.
Right.
It's just absolutely wrong. The thing
that's characterized American military dominance through the Cold War and to present is air superiority. Mm-hmm. We were able to operate in these tiny elements, compared to large, like attrition style warfare, because we can count on, hey, I'm going to send 4, 8, 12, 16, 40 guys into this area and it's fucked. But I know if shit hits the fan, air support's going to be there and we can probably get out of it. We're not running suicide missions here. We can probably get out of it. You can't expect people to do operations like that if they don't know for sure that somebody's coming to back their ass up. I don't know why anybody goes and takes a job at the State Department or CIA anymore, frankly. Because they've shown not just a willingness, but sometimes they leap towards abandoning their fucking people. You know what I mean? How can you operate like that?
Well, and that's
the CIA, as soon whether it was in Africa or Afghanistan, when we did a strike, within an hour maybe, they would have information on collateral information to prove whether or not we got the guy. Yep, that was actually the guy. You got him, blah, blah, blah. Or there was other collateral damage that we need to be concerned with. So that was known immediately, right? They knew all of that immediately, and they did nothing with it. They rushed the attack. Biden's inept. Yes, we all know that. But he just delegates authority to the generals to execute these strikes. It's up to the generals to ensure everything is in place to do it. It's the same thing with the military operations in Bagram and the rest of the places, right? It's up to the generals to get it right. And if they don't get it right, or they're being told to do it the wrong way by people who have absolutely no business giving military advice, then we need to tell them so, and we need to stand on our principle. And I guarantee you, people will come to your aid in a second. America will back you up, because they don't want their sons and daughters thrown to the slaughter.
Correct.
They don't want us to go out and unnecessarily kill civilians and children and aid workers and so on. They don't want us to do that. So they'll back you up if you're told to do something insane. This isn't about disobeying or taking control of civilian authority. This is much more important than that. It's about doing the right thing.
Well, you would never say that to a mechanic, though. If a mechanic came to work on your car, right, and he's doing stuff, and you're like, hey, man, I don't know if you're doing stuff, he would tell you to shut the fuck up or get out or something, right? I'm the one that does the war. You tell me what goal you need to accomplish, and I will decide how to accomplish it.
But the way that this is supposed to work, right? So, because I want to go back to this piece of accountability. So, the generals all get together. They come up with their plan of how we need to execute this, right? Or they think this is a good idea or not. And let's say it runs all the way up to the commandant or whoever's in charge of Afghanistan or whatever. Whoever it is that's reporting to. Who do they report to? Who does all these? They're all reporting to one person, because one person's going to go in and brief the president.
Yeah, well, in this case, it was McKenzie, because the 4-star general that was in Afghanistan left and then resigned, right?
And so then it goes over. McKenzie's gonna get with who, and they're gonna tell the president. And do you think? And do you with obviously with Milley, right? And so do you think for one second that Because here's the other problem I have with them coming out and trying to clear their name of accountability, right? Do you think they went in there and said, Mr. President, we feel like we would like to tell you that there are some risk with us pulling out too fast? Or do you think they looked at him and said, Mr. President, there is no doubt in our mind that there are going to be young servicemen and women, U.S. service members, that will die because of this plan if it's not executed right? Which one do you think they said to him? Because I seriously doubt that the President of the United States, and I think this is why they don't resign. I think they can't resign because they didn't say it direct. They beat around the fucking bush. They didn't tell him it was a bad idea. They didn't advise him directly. Yeah. I think they can't resign. That's why Millie and all these people have got to hold on and ride this wave down.
Because then they got to come out in public and say what they said. They got to say what they said.
That's the problem. They really didn't do it.
Is there any place, is there any time ever that a meritocracy is more important than when literal lives are on the line?
That's it, right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
It has to be a meritocracy. It has to be. Your feelings are not facts. Your political strategy is something that we do take into consideration because we don't wage war for no reason, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that we should tell the State Department to go fuck itself, but when it comes time to do war, shut the fuck up.
Well, and I think that's why when they started trying to write all these rules of engagement, right, which are like a lot of them are complete bullshit. But I do think the one thing they tried to do at the end of it, or represent to the service member with these rules of engagement, are at the end of every rules of engagement, it has the same fucking sentence, or hostile act, hostile intent, which to me, and look, I was only an E4 and now, got out and then became sergeant. So I was, I was a fucking nobody. But to me, what that meant was when U.S. service members' lives were on the line, all the fucking politics and policies were out the fucking door, right? And what do you, you're a general, so what do you think about that?
Well, I honestly think that it was the former that you described that's what happened. They sat in there and they said, okay, here are some of the risks, but they weren't adamant and didn't paint the picture for the president on exactly what was going to happen with this plan. No outside coordination, leaving our Americans on the ground, leaving our allies on the ground, no coordination with our allies, leaving our Afghan partners, leaving our dogs. They knew better than to pin their hopes on the Afghan National Army and police that they were going to be able to effectively fight the Taliban, knowing that all the assessments up to 2021 indicated that they couldn't win a fight by themselves on their own against the Taliban. And as soon as that happened, I looked at my wife. I give it 3 days. It didn't even take 3 days. The guys that were on the ground, people like yourself, we know the reality of what's going to happen because we've been sending these assessments up that have been ignored time and time again. And because they were in on it with the bad strategy back in 2014 and before, they're married to it, right? And so they're going to do everything they can to try and cover it all up, to try and make sure that it doesn't stick to them because they're not going to take accountability of it because they haven't had to
because
for
they're already
20 years.
They're already pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Right.
They're already pregnant with this idea.
They've got to ride with the whole thing.
Well,
You're
now
right.
this all sounds really abstract within the confines of just the Afghan operation because people don't I like to narrow things down to one specific event. Yesterday we had an Afghan National Army guy who now lives here in Austin who was a combat engineer over there. He came over here on an SIV. He's trying to get his family over here. His dad was one of the people who suffered at the hands of the Taliban. They beat him to death through a checkpoint because probably the only reason they would have known who the guy was because he was just a combat engineer, lower enlisted guy. He wasn't he wasn't an intelligence operator. He wasn't even an interpreter that worked with the American government. The only reason they would have known who he is because he was over there and he was on a list of names that the fucking president gave to the fucking Taliban, right? So they start picking up his family, beat his dad to death. That's a very specific example. Here's a specific example of I want some military commanders right goddamn now to take some responsibility for this shit. We've heard this suicide bombing at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. We have collectively spoken to 3 separate members of JSOC and 3 separate branches of the military who have all confirmed that we knew who this guy was. And now we definitely know that we know who he was because the CIA had him in captivity for 4 years until the Taliban let him out.
Exactly.
Right? So we knew who he was, but not only that, we knew when and where, specifically where the gate that he was going to strike. We knew he was going to suicide bomb. We knew approximately when. JSOC reports that they had a fucking predator on this guy, requested permission to fire, and were told no. I want to know who the fuck said no. My understanding is it was the State Department.
Hey, and here's what I would say is, like, just going out on a limb on this. I think that if they had messed up and killed that guy, like, let's just hypothetically say that he wasn't doing it, right? Let's say that they smoked this guy. I think that they could justify, accidentally killing this guy who the CIA with having enough justification on it because the CIA's has got a history versus killing an aid worker. I mean, how does this happen?
Yeah, exactly. Listen, if that was the case, in my opinion, based on what you just told me, there was reasonable certainty to take that guy out. He was a known terrorist who had just been released from prison. We knew he was going to go back and try and do things against Americans, against Afghans that we support. He was going to do it. And if we had him in our sights and he was targetable, there's plenty of justification there. I would have stood up in front of the American people as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and said, hey, listen, this guy was the following. He shouldn't even have been out of prison. He should have been still in prison. But since he was going to do, we know he was going to do something. This is a war zone. This isn't bringing somebody into court. These guys are enemy combatants, and they need to be dealt with that way. And when we don't deal with them that way, we pay a price.
Yeah.
And it would be easy to say, hey, I don't care if, Nancy Pelosi doesn't agree with me or Chuck Schumer doesn't agree with me. I don't give a rat's ass. This was about protecting our guys and other Afghans on that airfield, and he is an enemy combatant. End of story.
Right.
Thank you very much.
This is one of the more high profile. This might be the most high profile military debacle that we've seen in our lifetime.
This is going to be studied forever. Yeah.
So if there isn't going to be any accountability on something this high profile, then there isn't going to be any. That's my expectation. Now one of the things we're seeing, and Tucker Carlson was reporting on this the other day, it looks like there's probably going to be a mass exodus of special operators who don't want to get vaccinated for one reason or another. And instead of staying and doing what they're told, which is not something that they really care to do that much, as you're well aware, they're just going to bail out. And I think it's going to permeate through the armed forces. It's not just going to be special operators. It's going to be a lot of people who have other options in life are just going to bail out of the military. And I think this is very dangerous and something to keep your eyes on, because this is one of the ways that you start to specialize, for lack of a better phrase, your armed forces, your police, or whomever it is, to a specific group of people who will do what they're told. There's this trope about the military, particularly about infantry people, for some reason, that they're all brainwashed and whatever the fuck stupid shit. There isn't a more independent thinking group of people. The reason that we're good at what we do is because we think independently. Because you give us a problem, we'll figure it out. You give us a problem and some details, task, condition, standard. That's it, right? That's it. We'll figure it out. And that's how these people think. Those types of people are going to leave. Yeah. And then the enforcement mechanism, both of our foreign policy and of our domestic policy and domestic security, are now going to be these brainwashed turds who are willing to do what this staff sergeant we saw on TikTok talking about, right? Like, if you're a domestic terrorist, I'll shoot you. I don't care if you're American, or whatever the fuck she said. We heard a lot less about her in the mainstream media than this Marine Corps lieutenant colonel, right? Who just asked, what the fuck?
Right.
Because none of it made any sense. Like I said at the top of the show, the way this operation went has left anybody with any real military experience completely baffled. You cannot have fucked it up this bad unless you did it on purpose. That's what I think. So what the fuck?
That's right.
And now we're gonna see it. We're gonna see a decline in our forces, not just in number, but in quality, and not just in quality specifically, but in the quality that it takes. So imagine that the power and might of an institution is like a star, right? It is the gravity of the hydrogen and helium at its core are pulling inward as hard as it can, but the pressure from that is pushing out and keeping it a sphere. Once those heavy elements start to get created and it turns to iron, it collapses in on itself. That's what happens when it becomes concentrated too much in the center. It collapses in on itself and it loses its ability. It blows up at that point, and that's what we're going towards right now. And it's very frightening. Not like I feel physically threatened because, again, they're turds, right? But it is frightening for our country because we need these people. We need these institutions.
Well, the last thing that I truly believe in the United States, and I think this is, I think it's because it's the last thing standing that people believe in and trust is our military. Mm-hmm. You've seen, look, whether, which is, it's terrible that people don't trust law enforcement anymore. People don't trust our government anymore. They don't trust our leaders.
Well, next up is Border Patrol, right? Now Border Patrol is going to be the enemy.
But it's already starting. I mean, they've already started that, right? They started that, a while ago, back when they were, when they started doing these documentaries on them, of them holding people in these camps and shit, right?
Yeah.
But the last thing that hasn't been touched is the United States military. Mm-hmm. And now you got this. Now, damn well that our allies don't trust us at all now. I mean,
especially France, right?
Well, I mean, not only are we leaving, but on the backside of this, to make this even worse, we are leaving Afghanistan. We didn't even bring the people that helped us. We're letting them to get slaughtered.
Exactly.
Then on top of it, we turned around and sent a pallet of fucking cash to the same people that we were fucking fighting for 20 years.
Yeah.
So,
that's going to continue because they can't make money.
So my thing to you is do you believe that people are doing this consciously, or do you believe they're doing this incompetently?
I think it's all part of the plan to undermine every important institution in our great republic in order to be able to change our economic system to a Marxist economic system and to promote their American communist agenda so that they can stay in power and govern us from the top down. And they have to take control of the military in order to do that.
Yes, they do.
And I believe that this is happening, and we need to stop it by voting them guys out, by putting people in that we know are dedicated to public service, dedicated to our values and principles and to our Constitution. And we just don't have them there right now. Look, who's speaking out? Nobody is speaking out. I go on every...
You're the only general I see speaking out.
Yeah. And that's just it, right? They're not speaking out, and they know it's wrong. I know they know it's wrong. They're just, sitting there and, hand-wringing and wondering, what are we going to do now, instead of rolling up their sleeves and saying, hey, enough is enough. We've seen this, play out in many other places, and we don't want it to play out here. The Senate is going to have to stop rubber stamping promotion lists for generals and admirals and start really looking at it. And I've made that suggestion to Tom Cotton and to others. You just can't, it came over from DOD, it must be good to go. It's not, right?
And what other investigation would you just accept the party you're investigating's word for something and not look further into it? You know what I mean? That doesn't even make any sense.
They don't accept they don't accept it when it comes from me or my subordinates.
Right, yeah.
Right? This double standard has got to go away. The way we pick our senior officers has to be changed. This focus down all the time. You mentioned it earlier. They always want to, they find a problem. They always want to fix the lower echelons, because the lower echelons, SOCOM published a letter in October of 2017 that said the problem with special ops is that the special operators have lost their way, they're morally corrupt, and they have bad ethics. No, they have bad leadership.
Yeah, they're a direct reflection of leadership.
Yeah, and right. that whole thing
needs to be replaced.
Correct. It's always the leadership, right? Almost always the leadership. That's why. I agree. Back to your point about the Marxist shit. People used to think that the Soros thing was, and I'll include myself. I used to think that was just some wild conspiracy theory and until relatively recently. And then you see in the California recall, he spent $1 million on Gavin Newsom's recall campaign. He financed 275 district attorney and judge elections over the last 5 years or so. But forget about Soros for now. He's obviously a player in that game. But if you want to understand how this works from a strategy standpoint, go on YouTube right now and look up Yuri Bezmenov, the 4 stages of ideological subversion, and watch the whole hour and 20 minutes of that. And you will see exactly how this is going to go. I know some of you have watched this before because you've mentioned it to me before. You weaken the institutions that protect the place, right?
Yep.
And then you fill them with sycophants. And then you do whatever the fuck you want after that. It doesn't. That's the plan. After that, it doesn't matter what your plan is. You can do whatever you want.
Ben Shapiro wrote a book that I read, and I constantly refer to it. And it's How to Destroy America in 3 easy steps. 1, destroy our American philosophy, which is basically our values, principles, and our Constitution. Then undermine our culture, meaning what you just said. Corrupt our institutions. Take God out of the public square. Undermine our families, undermine our education, and take everything away from our communities and take it over top down, right? And then the final thing is destroy our history. Turn our history against us. Make us ashamed of our history, like Germany is of their history. Instead of using it to make the future better and learn from mistakes and take the positive things and move them forward in the name of freedom. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to destroy this nation under some idea that Marxism and communism is better. And, oh, by the way, let's not take care of our veterans because we know that they're trained. We know they love their country. We know that not one veteran served to protect Marxism or communism. They served to protect our nation. And we know that they've taken that oath for life and that they'll pick up a gun and they'll stand a post. So let's not take care of them. Let's undermine their health care. Let's act like we care, but we really don't care. And we'll screw them all up. And that's another thing.
To make them question it. Yeah, to make them question it.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say to that. America is not geographical borders. It is not states. It's not 50. It's not 48. It's not 13. It is the idea that individual liberty and entrepreneurship is the ultimate inoculation against tyrannical bullshit.
That's right.
For the first time in human history, we, instead of having an aristocracy make laws and pass them down, we said, hey, people, you make the laws. And then we'll have public servants come govern over those laws from time to time and then get out of there. Unfortunately, it seems like to me, and I've been having this debate with myself recently, I know that we are a constitutional republic, but it seems like a republic is just an aristocracy with extra steps. I'm not sure how we work our way out of this at this point because, I mean, I reference this book quite a bit. In the 1930s, there was a book called The America 60 Families, right? Already, before World War II was even finished, we already had this aristocracy and everybody knew it. It was the Rockefellers and all these assholes, right, that were in charge of everything. They're the ones that had the money. They're the ones that owned the large property. They're the ones that did this and that, and they're the ones who had political dynasties.
I hate it. I hate legacy names. They do it in the military, too.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even know what a legacy general was until I made general, and they said, oh, yeah, he's a legacy general. And I go, what the hell's that? And they go, oh, his dad was a general, right? And so when you look at it, and then I said, what the hell is that all about? So I started looking at it, and I go, oh, I'll be damned. It's like this little formula they have, to promote each other. And you're right. I can't stand it. Here in New Hampshire, we got, a political name, and it's called Sununu. And I got to tell you, it's not good for New Hampshire. I mean, the guy is just not good for New Hampshire, but because he has a political name, everyone's got to fall down and genuflect. And we call our governor up here His Excellency. Are you freaking kidding me? That needs to
That's crazy.
The legislature needs to get rid of that. You're not entitled. You're appointed or elected you're not anointed. And that's the biggest problem that people have, right? Is they think they're anointed. Oh, now I'm in this position so I can preside, exercise my pet peeves, do anything that I want. I'm above the law. And that's what we've got. And that's a huge danger. And in 2022, we gotta get rid of that crap. We gotta stop that.
Yeah, I think of it like this. We are collectively, when I say we, I mean the American people are collectively a group that has a task to perform, which is to run the country. And we've entrusted that task to somebody else, a subordinate. Congress, the Senate, the president, they are subordinates. They don't tell us what to do. We tell them what to do. That's how that works. And when that flips, when they stop doing the job properly, when they stop taking it seriously, when they start using the position to benefit themselves and not the country, then you have to take that power back. Sometimes it's through mass running for office. Sometimes it's through taking some kind of other steps to limit their power. That's the whole purpose of the American government, right? From its inception has been to limit government's power. Mm-hmm. This isn't an argument about right versus left. It's an argument about what has failed for 6,000 years of human history and what we know to be successful, which is individual liberty. That's what works.
Limit power. Protect individual rights.
Yes. That's the only thing that really matters.
Supposed to do.
It's the only thing that really matters. And unfortunately, we've completely lost our way here.
We have lost our way.
This has been a great conversation. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you enough.
We'd like to have you back sometime soon, and we'd also like to have you.
I'd love to come back. You guys are awesome.
Absolutely. And we'll reach out to you. We always end the show by telling the audience that we'll see them in hell. Because we're both infantry dummies. So so are you. So here we go.
It's an honor to be with both of you. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
For the message you deliver. I really appreciate it.
Yes,
Thanks, sir.
Thanks so much.
All right. We'll see you in hell.
See you now.
Yep. See you in hell.